Today we're going to cover Ben 10 Alien Force from start to finish. After the beloved show Ben 10 Classic, the show took a 5-year skip in the timeline. Ben, now 15, along with his cousin Gwen, embarks on a journey to uncover alien conspiracies and find his missing grandpa. So let's jump right in and explore the series in detail. This show is divided into 2 major arcs, and for the sake of this video, we will divide them into the Hybrid Invasion arc and the Return of Vilgax arc. So, Ben is now 15 years old, living a normal teenage life, and has left his past life behind. Or so it seems. After a day at school, Ben goes around looking for Max until he finds his van, but there is still no sign of him. He gets attacked by an alien, and who I would assume was also looking for Max. After a close encounter with the alien, Ben finds a hologram message inside the van from Grandpa. Max basically tells him he is in a predicament and has the watch, which confuses Ben even more because he has the Omnitrix hidden in his room. He meets Gwen and the two discuss if Ben needs to put on the watch again because they assume Max is in deep trouble. They also encounter this plumber named Labrid, who tells them that Max went missing on a mission to stop some kind of bioweapon trade. Sensing the urgency of the situation, Ben puts the Omnitrix back on his wrist. Ben 10 is officially back. Labrid takes them to this discreet trade site where DN aliens and Forever Knights are trading weapons. And guess who's dealing? Good old Kevin Levin. Chaos ensues, but something is wrong. Ben's watch is going through a factory reset. Ben also has a brand new set of aliens that we have never seen before. Gwen has enhanced magic abilities, and Kevin has the power to absorb any material and have it coated on top of his body. Ben quickly overpowers Kevin, but the Forever Knights and the DN aliens escape in the meantime, and only Kevin knows where they are headed to. After some charming words from Gwen, Kevin agrees to help them, but only because his business was also affected. So Kevin takes them to Forever Knights castle, where they fight a dragon and a bunch of knights. They manage to beat them, but Labrid gets a severe wound and dies. Goodbye, plumber, we won't miss you. Before dying though, he asks Ben to locate and destroy the source of the weapons. Kevin takes his plumber badge and joins the team. Using Gwen's powers, they locate a mine and sneak inside, only to find a whole factory built underground. They expect to find Max here, but to no avail. But at least they find the weapon room. They could have taken a subtle approach, but this group just likes to draw attention to themselves. After causing an explosion in the weapon room, they are surrounded by DN aliens and a hybrid commander, who is so strong that he even throws Humongosaur around. Hybrids like to work in silence, but since their ship is exposed, the guy plans to destroy everything in a 5-mile radius to erase all evidence.
I can, and I will.
Luckily, Ben crashed their ship, but his presence is noted by the Supreme Commander of the Hybrid. So Kevin betrays the group and runs off with Max's van. Well, that didn't take long. He meets this guy Argit to sell the van for money, but Argit betrays him and leaves him empty-handed. And that, my friends, is instant karma. Having no lead at hand, he goes to his old friend Valkanus and offers to work for him in exchange for something he needs. Kevin had double-crossed them in the previous show, so he forced them to absorb Tatanite and starts mining him. However, Ben and Gwen arrive to the rescue, and they quickly learn that Kevin did not betray them. He was in fact looking for another hologram from Grandpa Max, which was in possession of Valkanus. After defeating the guy, they play the hologram, and Max tells Ben to gather others with superpowers because what awaits them is something he can't deal with alone. With that goal in mind, Ben starts looking for recruits to join his team. Firstly, they have to deal with the issue of Gwen's missing brother, Ken. They find him in a hatchery, but turns out he has been converted into the DN alien, which begs the question, are all DN aliens former humans? But more on that later. Ben learns that Omnitrix has the power to revert Ken back to normal. Ken tells them Max is also in the hatchery, and after a small reunion with Max, they learn that the hybrids are making a large shipment of these little alien beings that turn humans into DN aliens. This hatchery is the source of their birth, and they have no choice but to blow it up. However, a hybrid commander appears and stops the gang, and in a do-or-die situation, Max uses his plumber device to make a suicide bomb and blows up the entire place to save humanity. Also, remember how earlier Ben was able to revert Ken back to human? Well, later during a mission, they learned that DN aliens are in fact humans, and instead of killing them, Ben can simply turn them back to normal using the Omnitrix. Sometime later, the trio camps at Max's favorite spot in his memory, when they encounter a strange woman placing extraterrestrial flowers under a tree. The group follows her and learns that she is their grandmother Verdona. Later, they meet her in Gwen's house, and it turns out Gwen's parents were already aware of her. Gwen is part alien, which also explains how she got her magic powers. Verdona explains how she fell in love with Max, but the two grew apart because he always was on missions. She says that the news of his death was so big that it was mourned across the galaxy, so she decided to visit Earth to say her goodbyes. She's also intrigued by Gwen's powers and asks her to come to her home planet where she can explore the full extent of her abilities. After some pep talks with Kevin and Ben, Gwen decides to stay, which infuriates Verdona, and she tries to abduct Gwen. However, when she realizes that Gwen loves her life on Earth, she backs down and returns to her planet. Remember how I told you that Max wants Ben to gather a team of people with superpowers? Let's come to that. Firstly, they locate a plumber using Kevin's new plumber badge, only to find that the guy is identical to Heat Blast and the police are after him. Ben restrains him, but they both escape, and the guy introduces himself as Alan, who is the son of another plumber. He is part alien, and this is how he gets his powers. Together, they encounter this giant weather tower, which makes an area much colder to make it habitable for DN aliens. They settle their dispute with the police, and Alan becomes the first member of Team Ben 10. Next up is Michael Morningstar, who at the surface looks like a cool, handsome guy, but later, the group learns that he has been sucking the life force of college girls to gain more power. He tries this on Gwen as well, but she breaks free and kicks his ass, reverting him back to his old, ugly, true form. He returns as Darkstar and tries it one more time later in the show, but fails again. He even gets arrested by a plumber and is put in prison. The next recruit is Julie and her alien pet Ship, Ben's love interest in Alien Force. The two go on a date where they find this baby version of Upgrade. He guides them to his mother, or father of sorts, who is stuck in a ship that is a ticking time bomb. He separated the little one as a last attempt to get help, but after he is freed, he asks Ben to keep the baby version of himself. Julie names it Ship and keeps it as a pet. Later in the show, Ship gets abducted by Forever Knights, where he learns to transform into a spacecraft, which will be used many times by the heroes to travel across different planets. Alright, so next up is Professor Paradox, who is by far my favorite character in the show. He was a scientist who was given the task of building a time machine by the government 50 years from the current time. During a test run, an accident happened which caused the portal to malfunction and suck him inside. After that, the project was shut down by the military and there was no sign of the professor. Ben, Gwen, and Kevin stumble upon his lab after being informed of an alien activity nearby. The alien they are after has this weird power to accelerate time on everything it touches, and at one point, he even makes Kevin like 80 years old. They meet Paradox in the same area, and he tells him the accident gave him time-traveling powers, and that he has been alive for millions of years, saving the Earth from the ever-pending doom. He even shows them a future of the Earth where he failed to save it from the time-accelerating alien. Together, they figure out the alien was just Paradox's assistant, who also got sucked into the portal, and they go back in time to rescue him. After helping him, they go looking for this nerdy guy Cooper and find him abducted by DN aliens. Cooper has telekinesis powers, alongside a deep knowledge of mechanics. He is being forced by the aliens to make weapons for them in a giant facility that they have created. Team Ben barges in and rescues Cooper, hence adding another member to their recruits. There's this one episode in Season 1 dedicated to everyone's favorite, Alien X. Alien X is basically a god who can do anything he wishes, but his powers come at a cost. Two other godly beings, Serena, the voice of love, and Bellicus, the voice of rage, are in a stalemate for millions of years on whether Alien X should be allowed to use its power or not. Ben has to become the voice of reason to convince them, which is ironic as Ben is the least reasonable person in the whole group. It goes as well as you would expect. In the end, Ben's like, to hell with it, I'm never going to use Alien X, send me back home.
Just let me out of here. I got 9 other guys who can do it better.
Albedo, a former student of Azimuth, arrives on Earth looking exactly like Ben and demands the Omnitrix from Ben.
It feels a little crazy talking to myself.
Claiming that he is the original creator of the watch. Ben is not just gonna hand him the watch. He's like, you want it? You come take it. The two fight, and for some reason, Albedo's hair turns white after their watches start sucking into each other. Azimuth arrives at the rescue and sends him back to prison. He also reveals that Albedo was kicked out because he wanted to create an Omnitrix for himself, but he did it anyway. However, Omnitrix's default DNA was coded in Ben's appearance, which is why he started looking exactly like him. He just wanted to turn back to his original form by unlocking the master control from the original watch. Well, I guess it's too late for that now. This one time, they receive a message from Helen, who is stuck in a null void and is in deep trouble. Ben decides to visit and help, only to learn that the void is being controlled by a villain named D-Void. He has manipulated Null Guardians to do his bidding and forces the locals to labor on a dig site. His ultimate plan is to tear through the dimension and take over the planet Earth. Helen, alongside Manny, works for a team called the Helpers, who are basically a rebellious group against D-Void's tyranny. Soon after, Ben learns that D-Void is none other than Dr. Amino, who has the ability to control animals. This explains how he managed to control the Null Guardians. Helen takes Ben to their leader Wrench, who by a miracle is none other than Grandpa Max. Ben is overjoyed to learn that Grandpa is alive and rushes in for a hug, but how did Max survive? Well, he reveals that after the explosion happened, the bomb opened a small portal and sent him to the Null Void, so he decided to stay and form the Helpers to deal with the whole Amino situation. Together with Ben, they launch a Zeke at his tower and ultimately manage to defeat him. Just then, Gwen opens the portal back to Earth and Ben steps in, but Max stays behind as he has some unfinished business left in the Null Void. After all this, Ben finally learns what alien conspiracy Max was trying to solve. During a mission, Ben and Hybrid get stuck on a planet named Turawust, which is basically a routing station for the teleporters spread across the galaxy. The planet is full of dangers, so the two have to work together to survive. There, the Hybrid introduces himself as Rain Rassig and gives Ben a little hint about what the aliens are up to. You see, Hybrid believe that they are the only pure species in the universe and every other being is made of impurities and mixed breeding. This is why they are disgusted by everyone and their ultimate goal is to invade every planet and erase its population. During their endeavors, the Hybrid gets his arm severed by a monster. So, to save his life, Ben transforms into Swampfire and gives him a new arm. However, this makes the Hybrid think he has become impure and is unworthy of living. Even when they find a way back home, Rain Rassig decides to stay behind as he cannot face his people with his impurity. For context, there is a solid chance that Rain Rassig will die in this scorching heat, but his superiority complex is so deep that he would rather perish than accept any other species. So finally, the Hybrids have started the invasion of the universe. Their first attack is at Galvan, which is Azimuth's home planet. Azimuth is the guy who created Omnitrix. Before he gets wiped by the attack, Professor Paradox appears and teleports him to Earth. There, the two warn Ben about the hyperspace jump gate, which is basically a teleporter that will help them send warships to Earth. It is finally time to bring out all the recruits they have gathered in the past to save Earth once and for all. While Kevin and Gwen are tasked with gathering forces, Azimuth asks Ben to stay behind because he has something important to discuss with him. Azimuth tells them that Omnitrix contains the DNA of millions of species from all across the galaxy, and since Hybrid have already invaded planets, they might have wiped out some of the species already. Only Omnitrix has the power to restore those beings, and for that reason, he wants Ben to stay out of this war. Obviously, Ben isn't gonna listen, so Azimuth unlocks the master control for the Omnitrix, which basically gives Ben access to millions of aliens and a voice command. Meanwhile, the recruits arrive to help and the gang starts making its way to the jump gate. On the way, Ben turns dozens of DN aliens back into humans, which gives Cooper the idea to create a beam gun that does the job for Ben. They've also brought Darkstar on board, but things get messy when he gets hurt in the middle of a fight and starts sucking the life force out of a bunch of DN aliens. Ben has to step in and remind him that those DN aliens are actually regular people who got taken over by aliens. They finally reach the control tower to deactivate the jump gate, but guess who's waiting for them? Another Hybrid commander, and he totally wipes the floor with them. But then, out of nowhere, Gwen taps into the Anodite powers and kicks that Hybrid's butt. The only catch is that she can't stay in that form for too long or it'll wreck her body. Just when they thought they had a chance to catch their breath, they find themselves surrounded by another horde of DN aliens. Luckily, Grandpa Max and the Helpers arrive at the scene to, well, help them. I guess that's where the name is coming from. Ben and the gang push forward, determined to reach the jump gate. When they finally get there, Ben is unable to cause any damage to it for some reason. He decides to go all out and transforms into Way Big. He grabs onto the jump gate, trying to yank it out of the ground, but things take a turn for the worse. The gate suddenly activates, causing a massive energy surge that leaves Ben injured. He reverts back to his human form, and to make matters worse, the Hybrid fleet has arrived ready to wreak havoc on Earth. There's absolutely no way Ben and the rest can fight a force this large in number, so their only hope is to convince the commander to call the fleet back. However, the commander says that only their supreme leaders have the authority to do so. So the gang decides to go through the gate in hopes of convincing them to call off the invasion and reach the planet of Auxtaka, where the Hybrid Supreme resides. When our heroes finally reach the Hybrid Council, they are met with a shocking revelation. The hybrids are on the brink of extinction. It turns out their relentless pursuit of racial purity has led to some serious consequences. Inbreeding has caused them to lose their resistance to diseases, rendering them sterile and unable to reproduce. And since they are going to die anyways, why not take down the entire universe with them? That seems reasonable, right? In a desperate attempt to convince the Hybrid Supremes, Ben uses the incredible powers of the Omnitrix to grant them immunity from their infertility and diseases. However, this comes at a great cost. The hybrid are now merged with DNA from various species across the universe. Remember how he did this to Rainrazig and he wanted to die after it? Well, the same happens here, and the Hybrid Supremes decided it's better to commit suicide than to live in this impure body. However, much to everyone's surprise, Rainrazig walks in with his impure arm and makes them realize that living like this is much better than waiting for their kind to go extinct. They all agree and appoint him their new Supreme, and as his first command, he calls off the invasion from Earth alongside every other planet they have invaded. Ben saves the entire universe from extinction, and this concludes our hybrid invasion arc. Next up, we will talk about Vilgax and his pursuit of the Omnitrix. In the Ben 10 universe, there's a cool law that says if you beat the toughest hero on a planet, you become its leader. Vilgax is on a grind. He now has the powers of the greatest heroes of the 10 different worlds, something he will use to get revenge on Ben. The plot is just amazing. Vilgax, the conqueror of worlds, seeking revenge from a teenager over a toy he can't have. His right-hand man, Siphon, who looks awfully similar to Corvus Glaive, arrives on Earth and officially challenges Ben to a one-on-one fight with Vilgax. Meanwhile, Ben and Kevin are busy tinkering with the Omnitrix, but things go south very quickly. An explosion occurs, which turns Kevin into a mesh of materials, and some of Ben's aliens escape from his watch. Azimuth scolds him for messing with the watch and warns him to locate the aliens ASAP, or they will be lost forever. Ben catches the aliens and then comes to the arena to fight Vilgax. Nothing too dramatic here. He turns into Chromastone, but to everyone's surprise, Vilgax crushed him into bits, making everyone think that Ben is dead. However, in the most hype fashion, Ben turns into Diamond Head and actually wipes the floor with Vilgax. With Vilgax humiliated at the hands of Ben, he spends the rest of the season making desperate attempts to get revenge on him. He even visits Ghost Freak's prison and offers to free in exchange for information on the Omnitrix. Ghost Freak tells him to visit the planet Galvan Prime, and in exchange, Vilgax lets him out. But guess what he does first after being released? He invades the planet of the very alien who rescued him. Now left with no other option left, Vilgax arrives on Earth to seek help from Ben. Gwen and Kevin think it is a trap, but Ben's like, I've already kicked his ass, so I can do it again. They go to his planet only to find out that he was, in fact, telling the truth. They also learn that despite acting all high and mighty, Vilgax loves his people and really wants to protect them. You think you know a guy. Anyway, they help him free his planet, and you would expect him to back down from the idea of taking revenge on Ben, right? Especially after he helped save his planet? But no, Vilgax now has the information about the origin of Omnitrix and wants to steal it for himself. Vilgax's quest for the Omnitrix takes him to Galvan Prime, a living planet with a special defense mechanism that calls out the Omnitrix and its creator when the planet is in danger. This causes Ben to be teleported to Galvan, where his watch leaves his wrist and flies back to Azimuth, who is fighting Vilgax on his own. Vilgax manages to steal the Omnitrix from Azimuth, but is clueless about how to use its powers. To gain more information, Vilgax abducts the entire squad. Also, Azimuth explains that Galvan's code and stream holds the DNA of all aliens Ben can transform into, but without the planet, the Omnitrix becomes useless. Ben outsmarts Vilgax by tricking him into turning into a goop, and then deactivates the gravity projector, rendering Vilgax powerless. Ben then turns into Waybig and literally launches Vilgax into outer space, defeating him and protecting the Omnitrix. However, Vilgax is still not done and heads straight to Albedo and frees him because the enemy of my enemy is my friend or something. Albedo starts working on this rip-off version of Omnitrix called the Ultimatrix and then abducts Kevin and Gwen to lure Ben out. Max warns Ben to not go alone, but despite knowing that this is a trap, Ben marches head-on to rescue his friends. You would think that this fake Omnitrix is no good, but Albedo actually transforms into the ultimate Humongosaur and obliterates Ben. He is then forced to give the watch away to save his friends, but Max arrives just in time to teleport everyone to safety. Now you see, the deal was that Albedo gets to keep the Omnitrix, but Vilgax goes back on his word and turns his whole army into Humongosaurs. Albedo tries to fight back, but gets captured in the end. I mean, can you really beat the whole army of giant power freak aliens? Meanwhile, Ben feels lost without the watch, but Azimuth arrives and reveals that the watch wasn't even meant to be his. But once they saw how good he was with it, Max convinced them to let Ben keep it. Ben realizes that it is he who gives purpose to the watch, not the other way around, and united with his friends, he returns to Vilgax to take back what is rightfully his. Using voice command, Ben initiates a self-destruct sequence on Omnitrix, but Vilgax thinks he is bluffing until the countdown ends and the watch is actually destroyed. He then turns his attention to Albedo, who hands over the watch after seeing what Ben has done to the original one. With the Ultimatrix, he turns into the ultimate swamp fire, and after a crazy fight, he crashes Vilgax's ship into the ocean. Despite Vilgax showing his true form under the water, he is no match for Ben, and the show ends as Ben reunites with his friends, vowing to kick his ass if he shows up ever again.
If he ever does, it's hero time.
This was Ben 10 Alien Force from start to finish. If you enjoyed it, drop us a like, share it with your alien friends, and subscribe to Cartoon Mania if you want to see more awesome cartoons like this recapped on your feed. With that said, we'll see you in the next one. Peace!